So, today we're going to unpack a story that honestly feels less like ancient history and more like a high stakes political thriller. We're talking about a king, a kingdom right on the edge of collapse, and a series of choices that would change absolutely everything. Let's get right into it. And really, this is the question at the very heart of the entire story. I mean, when the walls are closing in, how far are you willing to go to save your people? And what happens when the cost of that salvation might just be the nation's very soul?
Okay, so to really understand the crisis, we first have to understand the man right at the center of it all, King Ahaz of Judah. He gets the throne when he's just 20 years old, and right from the get-go, he starts steering the ship in a completely different direction. You see, in Judah, the gold standard, the ultimate benchmark for any king, was his ancestor, King David. But the historical record for Ahaz? Well, it's pretty blunt about it. It says he did not do what was right. And this wasn't just some small mistake. This was a fundamental break from the ideal his entire kingdom was built on.
And this wasn't just a matter of, a different leadership style. We're talking about some serious stuff. He started copying the practices of neighboring kings, he got involved in the horrifying ritual of child sacrifice, and he was promoting worship at all these unauthorized pagan sites. So what this means is that even before the military crisis kicked off, Ahaz had already set his kingdom on a really dangerous spiritual path. And it's right into this already volatile situation that a massive military threat just explodes onto the scene. The very existence of Judah is about to be put to the test. I mean, just try to imagine this. Two powerful armies from the kingdoms of Aram and Israel, they team up, and their target? Jerusalem. They completely surround the city, cutting it off from everything. For King Ahaz and for every single person inside those walls, this is a moment of absolute terror. They are trapped, they're outnumbered, and they are facing total annihilation. So, facing what looks like certain defeat, Ahaz makes a decision that is going to define his entire reign. He looks past his immediate enemies and turns to the regional superpower for help. The way he says this is so revealing. I am your servant and vassal. This is not a request between two equals. This is an act of total submission. Ahaz is basically offering to turn his independent kingdom into a puppet state for the Assyrian Empire, all in exchange for their army. But a pledge of loyalty like that wasn't going to be enough, of course. It required a tribute, a big one. So Ahaz goes and systematically strips the most sacred and valuable places in his kingdom, the temple and his own royal palace. He gathers up every last bit of gold and silver he can find and sends it all north as a massive gift to seal the deal. And in the short term, you know what? It actually works. The king of Assyria takes the payment, marches his army on Damascus, the capital of Aram, and just crushes one of the two enemies at Jerusalem's gates. The siege is broken. Jerusalem is saved. But this story is far from over. See, that deal with Assyria came with some pretty serious strings attached, and not all of them were financial. His political survival was now going to demand a spiritual payment. So get this. Ahaz is visiting the Assyrian king in the newly conquered city of Damascus, and he sees this huge, impressive altar, probably for worshiping Assyrian gods. Now, instead of being repulsed by it, he's inspired. He immediately has sketches and detailed plans drawn up and sends them back to his head priest in Jerusalem, basically saying, build me one of these. And just look at how radical this change was. The bronze altar, the sacred centerpiece of worship in the temple for generations, it gets unceremoniously shoved to the side. It's demoted. And in its place, this new, foreign, Assyrian-style altar becomes the main stage for all official sacrifices. This wasn't just redecorating. This was a complete upheaval of their entire religious tradition. But replacing the main altar, that was really only the beginning. The transformation of the temple was about to get a whole lot more thorough. The changes were systematic, one after another. Ahaz starts dismantling and reconfiguring all this sacred temple furniture. He's cutting up decorative panels, removing basins, and even taking the massive bronze water basin known as the Sea off its iconic bronze bull statues. And the reason for all this is stated explicitly. It was all done in deference to the king of Assyria. He was literally remodeling his nation's most holy site to please his new foreign master. So, after 16 years on the throne, how do we make sense of King Ahaz? I mean, his actions bring up a debate that honestly still echoes through history. The whole arc of his reign is really a story defined by one catastrophic crisis and one monumental decision. He inherits a kingdom, he faces its near destruction, he makes a deal to save it, and then he spends the rest of his reign paying the price, both financially and spiritually, before his son Hezekiah eventually takes over. And that leaves us with the final question, the big one. On one hand, you could argue his choices, as costly as they were, worked. He saved his city and his people from being totally wiped out. But from another perspective, the price of that physical survival was a complete spiritual and cultural surrender. So what do you think? Was he a pragmatist or a traitor to his faith? That is the complicated legacy of King Ahaz.